Good evening, everybody. Those of you watching online, those of you in the gallery, thank you for coming to our Board of Mayor and Aldermen regular scheduled meeting. It is June 3rd today. Time is 6 p.m. Stipulation of members' presence. There are 9 people that sit on this board. 2 of us are not here tonight. Alderman John Canapari and Alderman Vincent Fuquay are not here. We are joined on the dais by our city recorder, Ms. April Goad, our city attorney, Mr. Patrick Carter, our city administrator, Ms. Pam Caskey. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Pastor Mark. I'm a pastor here in Spring Hill of Southview Church. It's an honor to open this night up with prayer. I'll try to talk louder in here. Can you hear me? Okay. Heavenly Father, we humbly come to you tonight to lift up our city of Spring Hill, our governmental leadership, our citizens, and the overall community. We thank you for the opportunity to pray to you and invite your presence into these proceedings and decisions. We know and acknowledge we need your divine wisdom, your knowledge, your grace, your mercy, your justice, and truth now more than ever. And we invite you to help our city leadership to lead with all of these attributes. We ask you unite this city and these people together over the important matters and the things we aren't united over, that you give us grace and understanding to navigate through them respectfully and peacefully. And we declare this city to be a place of peace, safety, and prosperity. Jesus, we thank you for your salvation, your healing, your love. May you be ever present in this place, in this city. Lord, we bless all the different departments, from Chief Temple and the fire department to Chief Bright and the police department, to our first responders, our doctors, our nurses, all the other civil leaders and servants that help make Spring Hill safe, healthy, and beautiful, and an amazing place to live. Lord, we thank you for our mayor, our aldermen, our city leaders. Bless them, protect them, and keep them safe. So tonight, may our leaders govern well, lead compassionately, judge accordingly, and build purposefully with your grace and your guidance and your protection. In the greatest name, the leader, the greatest leader of all times, Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Thank you, Pastor Mark. Moving into the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda before we go for approval? Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 4 under new business, spoken with the applicant, and that is going to be moved to the work session discussion item as item number 5.
Can we move that to 1?
Okay, so we have a request to strike item 4 and move it to, I'm going to make that item number 0, which is before 1. So we'll move that because it was just before that anyway. With that, that is granted from the voting to work session, item number 0. Any further amendments to the agenda? So with the agenda as amended, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Moving on. Tonight for mayor's comments. So I had the opportunity to go to a visitation from a lady. Her name is Effie Dalton Heiss, and she went to her final place of resting on May 27th, just last week. And I want to say the reason I bring her up is because I read her obituary, and I did not know this woman, but a citizen sent me her obituary, and a staff person did, and as I read it, I was just moved extraordinarily that she was such an example of humility, an example of true public service, and I just wanted to acknowledge her tonight and to say to her family, if you ever watch this, that thank you for being a part of that woman's life. She was, again, I just want to reiterate that she was indeed an example of a person who lived a life of servanthood, and she had many people that like in all obituaries, well, in many obituaries, there was a long list of relatives that passed before her, as well as she is survived by. And so, to Ms. Heiss, thank you very much for being a servant and an amazing citizen of Spring Hill all the years that you did. You are acknowledged. Thank you. That concludes my mayor's comments. All right, moving into Citizens Academy recognition. So I'm going to read this little ditty here. Over the course of the last 2 months, the city of Spring Hill is proud to have hosted its first ever Citizens Academy. While we have hosted a Citizens Police Academy in the past, this was our first citywide academy. Over 8 short weeks, we covered a wide range of topics, including the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the Fire Department, Utilities Department, Administration and the Budget, Public Works and the CIP, the Police Department, the Development Services Department, the Library and Parks and Recreation. Several of these classes were held right here in this very courtroom. Others were held at facilities across this great city and featured tours and hands-on experiences. None of this would have been possible without the hard work of the Communications Department, which included Director Lucas Wright and Communications Specialists Maddie Ross and Jake Freeman. In addition to those people, we are happy to thank the city staff, the department heads, and the administration. Thank you all for inviting these residents in and giving them a first-hand look at how things work behind the scenes. We are proud to say that we have a graduating class of 18, and we are happy to welcome most of those students here tonight. As I read off your name, I'm going to come down. As I read off your name, please come and get your certificate of graduation, and we'll take a quick picture. Then we'll all line up and take a group picture. Coming down. So as I call your name, will you please come forward? Thank you. As I call your name, will you please come forward? I'll give you your certificate of graduation, and we'll stand behind the dais. We'll take a picture right here, and then we'll move over in front of the dais over here, and then we'll take a group picture. So, Mr. Robin Arends. Miss Robin Arends. Is Mr. John here as well?
Yes.
Mr. John? This is Mr. John Arends. Miss Lisa Armwine. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
She's the real mayor.
Mr. Nick Arthurs. Not here tonight. He's a graduate. Miss Linda Bongard and Mr. Steve Bongard. Sir. Thank you. Mr. Jacob Challey. Mr. James Crawford. Miss Diane Gallert and Mr. Joe Gallant. Mr. and Mrs. Gallant. Mr. Scott Lemon. Mr. John Northrup. Not here tonight. Miss Marcy Stevens. Miss Barbara Smith. Miss Christy Smith. Miss Serenith Sarandran. Mr. Serenith Sarandran. Did I pronounce your name right, sir? Saranath? Yes. Thank you. Shukriya. Mr. Greg Tipton. Congratulations. And lastly, Mr. Scott Wernick. So we'll take a group photo, but what I wanted to say to you guys, and thank you for wearing your shirts, and thank you for being, there's always, people always remember who is coming first. They never remember who's coming second, but you were the very first class, graduating class of the Citizens Academy, and there was so much work that was done behind the scenes to get you guys to do it, and as I followed along, hey, how does Citizens Academy go this week? I heard nothing but praise and great things, which is a testament, y'all, to the great city that you live in, and so thank you for being a part of this. We're going to get a group picture. Ladies and gentlemen, the first graduating class of the Citizens Academy.
Scrunch, you spent... Have everybody kind of angle toward me, TV and the podium in there. Oh darn, Lucas is cut off.
Super successful. Okay, Miss Caskey.
Yes. I'm going to ask Maureen Haley Thornton to come to the front. And while she's coming, I want to thank all of the city employees, Casey Williams and all of her staff, the fire department, everyone else who put on an excellent Hillfest event this past weekend. This city does not have a good history of controlling the weather. 2 years ago, it was freezing. Last year, I think the weather was pretty decent. This year, it rained right up until the time it started. But then I wasn't there, but I understand everybody just came out in droves. It was still a little rainy when I got there at the beginning. So thank you to all the staff and everybody that made that possible and everybody that came out and participated. it was a great event, and those dry fireworks, those daylight fireworks were pretty cool. So I didn't get to see them, but I saw videos. With that, we do a quarterly update with tourism as they are part of our organization now, and we ask them to make sure that they're being accountable to our participation with their program. And so with that, I will turn it over to Maureen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good to see you all. Just as Pam mentioned, wanted to provide an update, and you all have in front of you a copy of what I'm going through. I'll go through it relatively quickly, but please feel free to ask me questions now or at any time. So the first couple of slides give you an overview of our, since the last time I was here in December, paid marketing. And so this slide shows you the top is what our total message visitor spend was $2.1 million of visitor spending can be attributed to the advertising we ran from January 1st through the March 31st. The bottom line is actually what's specific to the city of Spring Hill. And you may remember in the last time I gave this presentation, we are now getting segmented by Spring Hill zip code spending. So in that January to end of March timeframe, more than $151,000 spent directly attributed to paid advertising that we're running, which actually was 7.2% of the spending during that time, which is actually pretty good. And so you can see just in terms of insights here, that actually puts Spring Hill's yield on par with downtown Franklin and Brentwood, the per person spend. And we saw an increase in the number of visitors and also spending in the most recent quarter compared to that before. So momentum growing on that. This next one is a year-to-date slide, so fiscal year-to-date, so July 5th to March 31st, that dollar spent in Spring Hill attributed to our advertising campaign, as you see, more than $568,000, $270 average per visitor there. And then giving you some insight in how the Spring Hill content on the visitfranklin.com website is performing. There's two main areas that we track. There is, if you remember, in the communities section, a Spring Hill specific page. And so you can see about 10,000 engagements on that page in the last quarter. And then that actually ranks higher than the overall communities page. So people are finding their way to Spring Hill content from all sorts of avenues in our social media, in our email marketing, in other parts of our website. And so we're seeing an increase in both of the clicks, scrolls, and engagements through quarter over quarter. Again, we're excited to see that momentum. Social media for Spring Hill focused posts, you can see there were more than 25 posts across our social platforms. There was an increase in impressions from the second quarter and an increase in the number of posts, and almost 650,000 impressions on content that is specifically including the city of Spring Hill. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that here in the next few slides. So we did a series, we've been doing more and more with social reels on Instagram. So those are short videos that allow us to tell the visitor a story about the experience. We also have static posts, and in addition to our social content, we also have that leading into blogs. So I have a little bit of a content highlight here as well. And so these are blogs that Spring Hill experiences have been included in the last quarter. The Antique Mall in terms of how to plan a fabulous girls getaway. The Fainting Goat Coffee Shop, which I'm not supposed to have favorites, but I have to tell you has some of my favorite coffee in our area. And then, of course, we have always talked a lot about Ripavilla and the great experience that happens there, thanks to the folks at the Battle of Franklin Trust. And also have increasingly, because of the season, started looking at how do we look at outdoor content and getting people to experience our parks and nature. And then who doesn't love Martin's Barbecue? We also do a seasonal digital guide. So our spring guide you can still find it online, but we promote it online during the spring season. So from February 20th to May 2nd, our spring guide was live, and there was a featured spread on Spring Hill that got more than 5,000 views on that and more than 20,000 engagements in that guide. So people are finding, reading, and learning more about the experience that there is to have in Spring Hill. We also, as you perhaps remember, the last time I came, I think I brought you all copies of our printed vacation guide. That's our primary mailed fulfillment piece for people who ask for information, who are planning their trip. And so we have been including in that editorial content around things to do, things to experience, and Spring Hill. In the month of March, our team actually did a campaign around helping more people discover that we have this great guide with information and inspiration. And so we did this golden ticket giveaway. And in the month of March, we promoted on social media and in our email marketing, and we had more than 3,600 print guide requests and over 3,000 digital guide requests just in the month of March. And there were 25 prizes. So the way that works is if you requested a guide in the mail, you had the chance that your guide would show up with a golden ticket, and that golden ticket entitled you to one of a number of prizes. And in those prizes, the grand prize winner got a little bit of everything, including a campaign ticket from Battle of Franklin Trust, which includes, of course, Ripavilla, but also had tickets to Ripavilla as one of the other prizes. So included Spring Hill, both in the prizing and in the messaging around that campaign. And then one of the other separate pages that I handed out to you all that I want to make sure you see is one of our group tour itineraries. So one of the focus areas of our sales team is how do we tell the story to group tours who are coming and looking for things to do. So think about folks who would be coming on a coach bus, whether that be seniors groups or international groups, people who are coming as a group. One of the itineraries that we have put together that we're getting some exciting momentum around, we launched this actually in January at a trade show called the American Bus Association, which happened in Nashville with thousands of people who plan group bus tours. And this itinerary is a Franklin and Spring Hill 2-day itinerary with an overnight in Spring Hill. And so it's an opportunity to experience some great experiences in downtown Franklin and the historic homes, spend the night and have some great meals in Spring Hill, and then spend the second day exploring Spring Hill and Ripavilla. So you've got a copy of that in front of you. It's something we continue to market and promote as part of why visitors would come and what they could do and experience in Franklin and Spring Hill together. And then also wanted to thank you. I know a couple of you had a chance to come by to our community open house. If you haven't, I invite you anytime you'd like to come and visit us at our main Williamson County Visitor Center, which is in downtown Franklin. We were closed for about 10 weeks for a pretty major renovation that reopened and was celebrated during National Travel and Tourism Week. And we had a few hundred of our neighborhood friends come by. One of our major focuses in that renovation was how do we help make sure that space, it creates a place for hospitality and welcome so that people who are landing physically in Williamson County and primarily starting their journey in the county seat in Franklin have a jumping off point. So it's a space for them with our staff to actually help them start planning their adventure, as you see here, painted on our wall, this idea of planning your adventure here. What you're looking at in this picture is a wall of custom design and curated rack cards of experiences, and I actually put one for each of you, and it has in there, if you open it up, Mayor, I'd love for you to open it up and look at the very first page where it says Spring Hill. So in addition to the ways in which we include Spring Hill experiences thematically, which is how visitors are generally looking for things to do. You'll see in there we've got inclusions of the antique mall and shopping. We've got some of the restaurants, some of the family-friendly experiences, obviously Ripavilla in our history, but we also have the specific Spring Hill rack card that gives people an idea of geographically and what there is to do. And so visitors, when they come in, they can choose their own adventure, they can get help from our information specialists and have this to take with them so that they can enjoy a fantastic experience. And then we also have some great merchandise, including this custom designed Williamson County, which also features some highlights of Spring Hill. If you look closely, you'll see Early's Honey Stand is represented there, and a couple of other great places, Ripavilla as well, in that. So if you did not get a chance to join us, I invite you anytime, come and visit us. I'd love to show you around. And then the last thing I'll call out here is just our ambassador program. And I know some of you have also taken this program. We added this year, the new season kicked off in April, and we added this year sort of a series of what we call them Connect Plus field trips. And so we actually hosted a field trip on April 20th. We did a private tour of Ripavilla, followed by a meetup at Brunch Collective. And we had about 20 ambassadors come and experience that. So our ambassador program is free and open to anyone who is interested in learning about the experience in our county and our community, and we keep them engaged so that they can help us be advocates for the great experience that we offer to visitors. And that is the end. I'm happy to answer any questions, but wanted to kind of just walk you all through some of those highlights.
I have a comment. Ms. Thornton, I just want to say thank you. That's a great presentation. You're doing a great job. I know that when we were first considering you, I had a concern that you were based out of Williamson County, but Spring Hill is all that, which includes Murray County, and you have ventured into that as you said you would. You've delivered, and so thank you very much for that. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun and a pleasure, so thank you all for your partnership.
Thank you. Ms. Caskey, anything further?
No, sir, Mayor.
All right, at this time, with the exception of a public hearing comments, are there any citizen comments regarding anything other than public hearing? Yes, sir, and the rules of engagement on this are you'll have 4 minutes maximum to make your comments. And you'll state your name and where you live, sir, and then go ahead.
I'm Jacob Challey, and I live at 607 Shirebrook Circle, and I just want to congratulate the city on all your hard work in getting the June Lake Boulevard interchange finally opened this past weekend. You know, I was able to use it this past weekend, and also on my commute today, I noticed that 31 was a little bit lighter than normal. It was really kind of nice, actually. And so just want to congratulate on that and just urge the city to continue to move forward to get the Buckners widened and lobby the state to get 65 widened in that segment so we can kind of complete the whole package. And I'm just really excited about the whole interchange, and it's just going to be so great for the city and all the economic development that's going to be coming on both sides. And I'm excited, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Challey.
Lucky night to get 2 thank yous in a row in citizen comments. Alicia Fitz, 2142 Sugar Ridge. Yes, please don't keel over. My brother and I had the unfortunate discovery of a part of our commercial parking lot collapsing into an old septic tank that we did not know was there. It's kind of a fun thing to have a big growing hole in your parking lot. But I wanted to thank the utilities folks, specifically Jesse and Elliot and Ray and Joshua and Jacob and Smiley, for coming out and making sure that while I was taking care of my mess, that my mess had not infiltrated a sewer drain that was maybe 3 feet from the old septic tank. And of course, when I thank them, I also have to thank Jessica and Ryan and TC as well. So I had a parking lot full of trucks. We have a parking lot full of customers and patients. Everyone handled it beautifully. The hole is covered up. There's no more sinking. It's all taken care of, but I couldn't have done it without making sure that the city piece was taken care of as well. The second thank you, Mayor, is for your acknowledgement of Effie Heiss. I don't know whether you all realize it, but Effie was one of those foundation stones in this community and was involved in just about every piece of the city that you could be involved in. Your public acknowledgement means a lot, I know, to her family and to those of us that knew her. But you're also doing something else tonight that acknowledges both Effie and her cousins on the historic recommendation from the Historic Commission for 2466 Depot Street. That was Dalton's store. And Dalton's store was run by Effie's father for a number of years after her uncle had run it. So tonight you honor her twice by honoring what she did for this city and by honoring the presence of her family in this city. So I wanted to thank you for that as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Christy Smith, 136 Split Rail Lane. I just wanted to make a public comment with anybody that's watching. As you saw that we graduated from Citizens Academy, I highly suggest that the next time that it does become available, that anyone that really wants to be involved, learn about our city and learn about the process and all the different departments and everything that they have going on and all the various moving pieces, I highly recommend it. Excellent class. Lucas, Maddie, all the department heads did a wonderful job showing and sharing us in the limited amount of time that they had. So I appreciate the efforts that were made. I appreciate the time taken, as I know that they had taken it away from their families, to be able to impart wisdom and information upon us. And it's certainly helpful, especially as somebody that serves on the Transportation Advisory Committee, to even learn more information about how things work in the city. So, Mayor, everybody, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Ms. Smith. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Bridget Ward, and I live at 2950 Jackson Road, Spring Hill, Tennessee, 37174. I and the residents who live on Jackson Road are here to discuss Jackson Road, which is behind the property, which is included in rezone RZN 1567-2024. We're only going to talk about Jackson Road. That's our concern, not the PUD. I emailed each of you a letter signed by the residents of Jackson Road with pictures on Friday. I hope you've had a chance to look at that. I received a response from Alderman Fitterer, thank you, to contact the Murray County Superintendent, as Jackson Road is a Murray County road. I know there's been a lot of discussion within the city about this little bitty road of ours. I did send Mr. Van Boscher, or Boscher, however you say his name, a letter yesterday and attached the letter that was sent to you and some pictures from Google Earth, which really show how extremely narrow our road is. He called me this morning, and I asked him if I could quote his remarks, which I have in here. One thing I'll tell you, and then out of order, is that there's very few reasons why road changes can be denied or changed when given to Murray County. This, he said, is one of them, and it did go to the county county attorney, and it was approved, and that is the letter that you all have now. But what he did say, he's very aware of Jackson Road. He's aware of the size of Jackson Road. Again, to remind, it is a small country road. It is only 0.8 miles, and it's only 10 feet wide, and it has a 20-foot right-of-way. He said in the letter, it is not a standard road, and it's not to be considered for excess, if I can talk tonight, traffic. It is, and he said it is meant for the residents of Jackson Road only and not for anything else. 4 times he said that Jackson Road is not up to current Murray County standards for additional traffic, and that is extremely important. That's why he said it 4 times. He said that the developer should design a different route and an exit, and that, I believe, is included in the letter. I did ask him, as I said, about emergency access, and he said the road is not meant for emergency vehicles or construction vehicles. And I will also discuss that the west side of the road has a very steep incline right into busy Rutherford Creek. Right now, it has a narrow shoulder that is soft and soggy, and any vehicle can go off the side. Quickly, again, I did speak to Chief Temple, who is here tonight, about his concern. He drove the road. He has thoughts, and he will speak to you about his concerns about using that road. One of the planning committee commissioners in the commission meeting, the planning commission meeting, had driven the road and said to him it's the size of a driveway and should not be used as an emergency or additional access point. Also communicated with our 2 Murray County residents, our commissioners, who oppose using Jackson Road for anything. They have a county meeting tonight, and they could not be here to share their concern about it. So if you've not already, if you could please review the letter, look at the pictures, and so you'll really clearly understand how narrow it is. Multiple blind corners with no street lights. In my opinion, it's a fatality waiting to happen if it is used. And we, the residents, are asking you to designate that Jackson Road cannot be used as a secondary point of access or as an emergency access, and that it cannot be used by construction vehicles or equipment. We appreciate your time, and I hope you all have the letter from Mr. Bushers.
Thank you, Ms. Ward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Another resident's going to show you some pictures of
Okay.
Jackson Road.
Lucas? Hey, do you know how to hook up, ma'am?
Oh, just hooking me up, okay. That's not Jackson Road, that's Big Sur, California, sorry.
How do I get there?
And
Well,
ma'am,
not
if
displaying what I have on screen.
ma'am, if you will state your name and address as well, that'd be
Sorry.
great.
My name is Monty Ann Swafford. I'm at 2970 Jackson Road. I'm going to show you some pictures of that and read to you my comments. I hope this doesn't count in my photo. Thank you. I'm just going to read you my comments and show you some pictures. Proportions, perils, and predicaments. Imagine it's raining. Your teenager, late for school, is driving along a narrow road about 10 feet wide. She tops a blind hill as a raccoon runs out in front of her. She swerves hard to the left, nearly toppling over a steep bank into fast-flowing Rutherford Creek. Thanking God for that miss, she speeds on her way. Rounding a blind curve a little too fast, a deer darts out in front of her. She crashes into it, airbags deploy, she's knocked unconscious, and her car is destroyed. Emergency vehicles are dispatched, but alas, they can't reach her because the road is too narrow. This situation, although fictional, could very easily happen if an exit in the new planned development is allowed access to Jackson Road. The situation at hand is whether or not the proposed development's second access point be placed on Jackson Road. Everyone involved in this decision can agree that safety is of the utmost importance. Some believe that it's fine to open up a roadway exit onto Jackson Road, a presumed emergency exit only. Others object to this narrow, winding, sloped back road, half of which is a private driveway, as an exit, emergency or otherwise. Indeed, I will demonstrate three main reasons why Jackson Road should not be used as an access for this new subdivision. They include dimensions of the road, the hazards of driving it, and elements encountered there. The first and most obvious reason is that the 10-foot wide Jackson Road is simply too narrow for traffic, much less emergency vehicles. Murray County records show that the road is about 120 inches wide. It measures 160 inches in front of my driveway, probably one of the wider points. When two vehicles meet on this road, one must pull over on one of the very few places available. They barely scrape by. How can a fire truck at about 120 inches wide, an ambulance of about 95 inches, or heaven forbid, a school bus at 102 inches, safely traverse this narrow back road? If that's not enough, other perils of Jackson Road abound. Treacherous curves, blind driveway, rocky bank, steep creek bank, dangerous inclines. Pulling out of the Ward family's driveway, for instance, is a daily risk for them, as there is no visibility to oncoming traffic until they are in the middle of the road. My pictures may not line up necessarily with my words, sorry. Another example is this winter on the ice, one of our residents slid off the road, thankfully unharmed, and onto a ditch on an incline of the road. During some of the many rains this year, a friend careened off the road into a tree, totaling her car. These are only a few of the many hazards. The deer and raccoon scenarios on Jackson Road aren't entirely fiction either, as a deer did dash into my car last year when I rounded a curve, leaving quite an impression. And recently an injured raccoon waddled along the road as we were out walking. We observed 3 cars swerve to miss it. Over the years, we have also enjoyed riding our horses up and down Jackson Road and always felt safe. I could carry on about the numerous skunks, squirrels, turkey, armadillos, and even a bobcat in the road, but I think that point is made. Those who claim Jackson Road should be used as an exit state that it will be barricaded and used only as an emergency exit, and everyone should be okay with that. There's inadequate support for this reasoning. First of all, how would a fire truck or an ambulance proceed through a blockade in a true emergency?
Ma'am, you're right at 4 minutes. I'll extend your time 1 more minute.
Thank you so much. I'll talk fast. Without question, I've shown the hazards of emergency vehicles on Jackson Road. Also, if it's not blocked, what is there to keep teenagers who are late for school from speeding down Jackson Road as a shortcut? Supporters for this Jackson Road exit also asserted that 2 exits are required in the subdivision. However, there are safer options available on Malon Moore, Battle Creek Way, or even Greens Mill. Therefore, inadequate evidence supports the use of Jackson Road for through traffic. The issue affects all new and current residents in the immediate vicinity and everyone who travels to and from the school, because we all want a safe route, not a dangerous one, especially for ambulance and fire trucks responding to a real emergency. Please vote no to any agenda item that would open Jackson Road to through traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's okay, I was just getting out of the way.
Hi, my name is Matt Wright. I live at 3011 Jackson Road. I want to talk a little bit about something that nobody else has mentioned. And a little background with me, I was in Tennessee Tech, took geology. I've got a lot of background in geoscience. And I want to start off with a little observation. So I grew up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, for those of you who are not aware, is a government town. It was built as part of the Manhattan Project, and it was built very quickly. It was built very succinctly with, grid lines and super great drainage. Now, what that means is that Oak Ridge, Tennessee never floods. We never see a flood there. Also, Oliver Springs, Tennessee, that is downstream from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, has flooded every year since Oak Ridge, Tennessee was built. Make sense? So what I want to call out here is a few things. So with practical experience in mind, there are 3 floodplains coming in to this property. Each one of them cycles through an enormous amount of water. What you have under this basically clay outlier is a shale base. That shale base floods very, very quickly. So the water hits it and runs off of it. So what happens when you cut all of that clay that is preventing quick seepage from hitting that shale is you create flood conditions. Those flood conditions flood right into the school system property. What you're going to create by putting this out there without any kind of flood mitigation is going to be downstream catastrophe that's going to affect the elementary school, it's going to affect downstream buildings, and it's going to become a problem. So it needs to be mitigated. I'm not saying that we can't build here. What I'm saying is that we need to put in flood mitigation at these choke points. Every area that floods out of this property needs a catch basin. That catch basin needs to be backed up by erosion prevention that prevents the creek from getting sediment. You're going to prevent additional flooding into the school system, additional flooding downstream, and additional property damage to the county. Thank you for your time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Are there any other citizens that wish to speak? Okay, thank you. Moving on. Ms. Goad.
Ordinance 2407 to amend Ordinance 1930 to establish water rates for customers of the City of Spring Hill. Ordinance 2408 to amend Ordinance 1931 to establish sewer rates for the customers of the City of Spring Hill. Ordinance 2409 to amend Title 18, Chapter 1, Section 18-108, Water Connection Charge, Spring Hill Code of Ordinances. Ordinance 2410 to amend Title 18, Chapter 1, Section 18-109, Sewer Connection Charge, Spring Hill Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. At this time, are there any citizens that wish to speak on the 4 public hearing items that were read? All right. Voting agenda. Consent items starts us off, and there are 8 of them. Ms. Goad.
Consider Resolution 24-117 to approve a resolution to correct duplicate resolution numbers. Consider Resolution 24-127 to authorize the purchase of a vehicle on government contract for administration. Consider Resolution 24-128 to approve a master development agreement with Buckner Lane Partners, LLC, in the City of Spring Hill, Tennessee, for the development of June Lake. Consider Resolution 24-129 to designate property located at 3035 Reserve Boulevard as a historically significant site. Resolution 24-130 to designate property located at 2468 Depot Street as a historically significant site. Consider Resolution 24-131 to designate property located on Alex Drive, commonly known as Newtown Cemetery, as a historically significant site. Consider Resolution 24-132 to award contract for the renovation of office furniture for the courtroom at City Hall and approve carryover budgeted funds for the courtroom renovation. Consider Resolution 24-133 to authorize the disposal of city vehicles and forfeited vehicles awarded to the police department.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda by Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Second.
Second by Alderman Murray. Any discussion on consent? Please vote. Consent agenda carries 7-0. Thank you, Board. Moving on, previous business, 4 items. Item 1 of 4 reads, consider second and final reading of Ordinance 2407 to amend Ordinance 1930 to establish water rates for customers of the City of Spring Hill.
Mayor, I move that we approve the second and final reading of Ordinance 24-07.
Motion to approve second and final reading of 2407 by Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Second.
Second by Alderman Murray. Any discussion? Please vote. Second and final reading of Ordinance 2407 carries 7-0. Unanimous. Thank you, Board. Item 2 of 4 reads, consider second and final reading of Ordinance 2408 to amend Ordinance 1931 to establish sewer rates for customers of the City of Spring Hill.
Mayor, I move that we approve the second and final reading of Ordinance 24-08.
Motion to approve final reading of Ordinance 2408 by Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Second.
Second by Alderman Murray. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion to approve 2408 carries 7-0. Thank you. Item 3 of 4 reads, consider second and final reading of Ordinance 24-09 to amend Title 18, Chapter 1, Section 18-108, Water Connection Charge, Spring Hill Code of Ordinances.
Mayor, I move that we approve the second and final reading of Ordinance 24-09.
Motion to approve 2409 by Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Second.
Second by Alderman Murray. Any discussion on this item? Please vote. Second and final reading of Ordinance 2409 carries 7-0. Thank you, Board. Previous business, item 404 reads, consider second and final reading of ordinance 24-10 to amend Title 18, Chapter 1, Section 18-109, sewer connection charge, Spring Hill Code of Ordinances.
Mayor, move that we approve the second and final reading of ordinance 24-10.
Motion to approve second and final reading of ordinance 24-10 by Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Second.
Second by Alderman Murray. Any discussion on this item? Please vote. Second and final reading of ordinance 24-10 carries unanimous 7-0. Thank you, board. Okay, new business. There were 4 items, but if you recall at the beginning of the meeting, we moved item 4 to item 0 of the work session discussion. So there are now 3 new business items. Item 1 of 3 reads, consider first reading of ordinance 24-13 and an ordinance to adopt budget amendment number 3, fiscal year 2023-2024.
Mayor, I move that we approve the first reading of ordinance 24-13.
Motion to approve first reading of ordinance 24-13 by Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Second.
Second by Alderman Murray. Any discussion on this item? Alderman Fitterer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just make everybody aware, earlier this evening at Budget and Finance, this item was favorably recommended 3-0. The 4 real changes within budget amendment number 3 are adjustments to the PEP insurance coverage, workers' comp, and adjustments on the operating transfers to the SURF fund. In addition to that, there is some expenditure at the wastewater treatment plant related to nitrogen, which shouldn't surprise anybody.
Thank you. Any further comment? Please vote. First reading of ordinance 24-13 carries 7-0, unanimous. Thank you, board. Item 2 of 3 reads, consider first reading of ordinance 24-14, adopting tax rates for the city of Spring Hill for the fiscal year July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2025.
Mayor, I move that we approve the first reading of ordinance 24-14.
Motion to approve ordinance 24-14 by Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Second.
Second by Alderman Murray. Any discussion on this item? Please vote. First reading of ordinance 24-14 carries unanimous 7-0. Thank you, board. Item 3 of 3 reads, consider first reading of ordinance 24-12, adopting a budget for fiscal year July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2025.
Mayor, I move that we approve the first reading of ordinance 24-12.
Motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 24-12 by Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Second.
Second by Alderman Murray. Any discussion on this item? Alderman Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious, do we have the bridge in this for the budget? Obviously, it's for next year. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
I know police is, I know it's kind of general. I'm just checking.
Yep, not a problem. Thank you for asking, Alderman Murray. In this proposed budget is the 10-year adjustments, as we discussed, that cap at $10,000 in this first year, recognizing there are some employees who need more than that. We'll come back at a later date to complete those. There is the bridge. We have determined that the impact of the bridge starts the July following the year after adoption. So we gain nothing by approving it in July and start paying for it in July. We could actually start it in May of next year and it would still have the same impact. We are going to propose in this budget that it starts in January. We will revisit whether we want to do that in January or we want to wait a few months. But the intent is to initiate the bridge in this coming fiscal year. And that money has been budgeted for half of the year.
All right, so just so I understood you, so that the 10-year, some of the 10-year payments up to, you said like 10,000. We've got in the budget, and then we'll look at the bridge.
We're just budgeted.
Right, it's budgeted, and we'll talk about at a later time the best time to implement.
Yeah, you'll have to pass a resolution to adopt the bridge. We'll talk among staff with the state and all of that to determine whether we want to spend the money we've got budgeted in January or whether it makes sense to do it in April or May. If we don't get any benefit out of it until the following July, I don't care to pay extra months if I don't have to.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do think as it being part of compensation, it may help achieve retention, especially with what we all know kind of goes on around the area with different tax bases and things like that. So we'll need a resolution, but I would say I think it can be something that helps us keep some talent.
Well, because we don't have it, and some of our higher competitive communities already have it, I think it's necessary to stay competitive. So I do not disagree with that. I think it also helps us deal with some potential workers' comp claims as our departments get older. And so it is in there. And again, you will have to deal with it again, but the budget money to be able to deal with it whenever we decide to is in there for January or after.
Thank you.
Is your light lit, Alderman Linville? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Is now the appropriate time to offer any amendments to the budget? I just have, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, can I make one comment for it? Thank you. So yeah, with regards to the bridge, so if we pass the budget and we, whatever is in the budget, we can at some point take it out. Is that correct? Or not fund it? Because when you said about the resolution, my concern with the bridge is I'm not convinced it's a great program because there's so much money that's paid to the recipients that are not Spring Hillians. That's the thing. But the other thing is that when we got the SAFER grant, which was fantastic, we funded 13 new firefighters, which is fantastic. When that funding runs out, then we have another expense that we have to continue to pay them, which we would, and to spend that much more money, I just don't know if it's sustainable. So if we can do it, that's great. But if it comes to a point where we can't do it because we have to pay our firefighters before we pay a benefit, then I would feel more comfortable if we could, take it out. Can we?
So two things. Number one, you are budgeting the funds tonight, but before the bridge goes into effect, there will be another action you must take. So the time to have the conversation, there's two choices. You can not do it. You can choose not to fund it, then it goes away. You can choose to fund it, and then you can take appropriate action, either up or down. If you fund it and you approve it, then the money's there. If you fund it and you choose not to approve it at the time the resolution comes forward, then that money just goes to fund balance.
Okay.
So you have, if you don't fund it, it's dead. If you fund it, you've got one more bite at the apple to say yes or no.
Thank you. Alderman Linville. Alderman Murray.
Yeah, I'm just for clarification. I'm under the impression that if we budget it for Spring Hill, it will be for Spring Hill police officers, and firefighters and
so
EMS.
The way that,
it's for our employees.
So the way the calculation works is that it is a state program, but they do an individual calculation based on our costs and the benefit that our employees are eligible for. It's called an actuarial study, and they do that annually, both for our pension system, and they would do an additional study for the bridge. Okay. So we participate, and I want to make sure I'm making sure I carry everybody with this. We participate in the state TCRS program, and we participate with the state on their health insurance program, okay? On the health insurance program, and I know that has been mentioned, but we are not individually rated. Our employees' costs go into the state pool and we mix it all up and we get a rate. That is not the case on the TCRS program. On the TCRS program, they do individual actuarial assessments, and our percentage of contribution changes year to year based on the actuarial assumptions that they put forward. They will calculate the bridge the same way. So while we are participating at the state level, it will only be based on our employees. There's a name for it and I can't think of it, but expected life expectancy, expected retirement dates, salaries, and all that stuff.
Okay, thank you for clearing. I just want to make sure, because that was my understanding.
Alderman Linville.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one amendment to offer for the budget. So I'll make the motion and then I'll explain it. So I move to amend ordinance 24-12 to add $15,000 to the legislative department line 52550 to set contributions to Williamson Inc., Murray Alliance, and the Spring Hill Chamber at an equal rate of $20,000 per organization.
There's an amendment that has been, how much was it, Alderman Linville?
$15,000 total.
1.5 or 5.0?
1.5.
And what's the disbursement again?
So it would be for $20,000 each for Williamson Inc., Murray Alliance, and Spring Hill Chamber. The 15 is in addition to what is currently budgeted.
All right, we have an amendment on the floor by Alderman Linville to put some more money into 2412, seconded by Alderman Fitterer. Any discussion on this item? Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Alderman Linville, so they're currently budgeted at 15 per, and your amendment raises it to 20 each, is that correct?
The way that it was explained during our budget discussion is that currently Williamson Inc. is budgeted at 10,000, Spring Hill Chamber is budgeted at 15, and Murray Alliance is budgeted at 20, so all three of them are different. And obviously all of them are respected, important partners for the city, and so simply what this resolution or this amendment is doing is bringing parity to the contribution levels to all the organizations.
Go ahead, sir.
So out of the 15,000 from your budget, 10 goes to which one?
10 to Williamson Inc. to move them from 10 to 20, and then 5 to the Spring Hill Chamber to move them from 15 to 20. And then Murray would stay at 20.
Alderman Fitterer.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Linville, given that June Lake is currently the largest private development in all of Metro Nashville, including larger than the $2 billion Titan Stadium, it seems obvious to me that $10,000 is a very small amount of money to ensure that we have a partner on board to help us fill that out with high-quality, high-paying jobs. Given Williamson Inc.'s long history of corporate recruitment, I think this is pennies on the dollars of what the return will be. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Just so the board's aware, due to ongoing civil issue on which I represent a client that's still up on appellate review on appeal, I'm going to recuse myself from the vote of this vote.
Any further discussion? I would like to say that Middle Tennessee, we have heard it from everybody in Williamson County, everybody in Murray County, people that use all kinds of different platforms to say we have exponential expected growth in this Middle Tennessee, which includes certainly Spring Hill. Everyone who is in the marketing business knows that. So when there are people in California, people in New York, people in Texas, people in Minnesota, fill in the blank, they all know that when they say, hey, where do we want to set up shop? Which place has the most growth? And Spring Hill will pop up on their whatever software they use because it is. I do not believe spending more money to market something that is an answer. If we, in fact, we're not in a position of not having to be able to say of us, hey, we have a lot of growth coming on. If we were fighting to lure businesses here, if we were doing everything we can to lure business here, then I would definitely support this. But because we have all over, even in the world, South Korea international business came here. Spring Hill is known, specifically Spring Hill is known, I believe, all over that we are a place where people want to set up shop. So I don't think that this is a good investment for taxpayers' money, regardless of how small the amount is. And I will not be supporting this based on those reasons. Again, I would support if Spring Hill was not a place of desirability and we needed to market ourselves better. But because we are, that is already done for us. So I don't believe this is good usage, good stewardship of taxpayers' money. Any further discussion? Okay. So as we're going to vote on the amendment then. Alderman Linville's amendment to 2412. We have a first and second, no discussion. Ms. Scode, can we vote electronically? So we are voting on the amendment. Please vote. Amendment 2412 carries 5 to 1 to 1. Thank you. So back to the original budget. Ordinance 24, first reading of ordinance 2412 as amended. Any further discussion? Please vote. Ordinance 2412, first reading of ordinance 2412 carries unanimously 7-0. Thank you, board. That concludes the voting portion of our meeting. Moving on to work session discussion. Item 0, which reads consider first, well, item 0, which is just a discussion item. So, Ms. Caskey.
Mayor, as our development director, Ms. Sanders, is coming forward to discuss this, this is put on a work session. The Planning Commission, to my knowledge, has not, have they taken action on this?
Yes, ma'am, they have.
So the next step would be to, and they favorably recommended it?
Yes, they did.
So this would, is discussion tonight, then it will be on the next agenda. It is a 2-reading ordinance, obviously. Go ahead, Ms. Sanders.
And can you, just for the record, what we're talking about is a discussion on the rezoning of approximately 126.47 acres known as Murray Tax Map 50, parcels 2.00 and 4.56 from rural residential RR to and agricultural district AG to single family district R1 PUD, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
There is a little more complexity to the Planning Commission's recommendation. So this item was heard on May 13th by the Planning Commission during their regular voting meeting. The proposal is to rezone the property, which is, the majority of the property is zoned agricultural, with a small portion zoned rural residential. The applicant proposes to rezone the property to R1 planned development. Because the property is mostly zoned agricultural, a planned development may be applied for or requested, but there's a requirement in the Unified Development Code to have a conservation overlay. And that means that the property must be developed a little bit differently to maintain the rural integrity for the majority of the property. So that allows an applicant or a property owner to sort of cluster development, resulting in smaller lots, but also resulting in larger areas that are preserved and may not be developed for residential use. During the Planning Commission's deliberation, they also included a recommendation to consider in place of the R1 PD, the RA, residential agricultural zoning district with the planned development and the conservation overlay. That would result in fewer residential lots, but would still require the conservation overlay and a development plan that results in those smaller lots, primarily central to the property, and maintaining the majority of the rural character on the edges of that property. I think that you've seen reference to a concept plan. That concept plan was projected on the screens this evening. That was a concept plan that was presented to the Planning Commission on May 13th as well. It is a separate application. A concept plan does not receive a vote. It is simply feedback on a potential design of the property should the BOMA rezone the property. So the applicant did receive some feedback on that concept plan. There is no vesting associated with that concept plan. And the applicant now has some direction from the Planning Commission in terms of expectations should the property rezoned. The implications or end result of that is that should you rezone this property, the applicant could come back with a new concept plan or could come back with a preliminary plan for the plan development that would essentially vest the property owner in a certain design and a certain density. So there was a lot of information that I just threw out at you, some technical info. I'm happy to clarify any of that information if necessary. Thank you.
Alderman Fitter.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to disagree with Ms. Sanders' report a little bit. I think what the Planning Commission did was approve the R1 and not the plan development. The prior planning staff had taken the position with this applicant that the PD and the underlying base zoning should move as separate processes. So it was the underlying base zoning that the Planning Commission had acted upon and recommended, and not necessarily the plan development portion of it that's associated with the concept plan. I know I'm really splitting hairs, but that's what we did. So to clarify the discussion around the RA zoning, this is a little bit of a unique situation where the comprehensive plan actually changes character area in the middle of this project. And essentially the discussion at the Planning Commission is it's possible that the RA zoning district is more consistent with the comprehensive plan on half of the property due to that split, and the R1 might be a more appropriate zoning due to the other split. So since the applicant had submitted for R1, the Planning Commission felt like it was not their place to change the application. I think we were right. But did encourage this board and the applicant to consider if RA would also ultimately help them meet their end goal as well. As far as product type, there's no difference between R1 and RA. It's some differences in minimum lot sizes and setbacks and whatnot.
Alderman Linville.
I guess the question I have is for staff. So as the Planning Commission, kind of recommended the board evaluate R1 and RA for the base zoning, just so the board's aware, part of the property is zoned ag right now, and you can't have a plan development on ag property in the current UDC. So the question I would have is, what would the difference be, not for the rezone, but for the concept plan that came through, depending on whether this is RA or R1 zoning?
So, we would want to take a look at just generally the end density that the new or lesser zoning district would yield in that case. So the applicant would essentially need to go back to the drawing board and produce something that is more in line with that base zoning district.
Okay, so essentially, and let me make sure I'm understanding what you're saying right now, the concept plan as it's progressing would not fit under the RA zoning as opposed to the R1 zoning? Or would it just simply be an additional diversion from the standard that they would be requesting under the PD process?
Yeah, I think it would be just a simple diversion from through the PD process. We do have to, the conservation subdivision or the conservation overlay gives some allowances, I would say give and take, in terms of the allowable end result of the number of units and sort of gross density versus net density. associated with the open space areas. So I think that, just to speak to your question about the progress of the concept plan, it would not progress further in the process as it has. I think, ultimately, if the property is rezoned and they pursue that PD, there is a requirement for a concept plan. So we would want to see something that is, more consistent with the final action of the BOMA should there be a favorable decision.
Mayor, if I may, excuse me, dear. I want to make sure that we have a good understanding of the processes here. Because so much of this property is zoned ag, it has to get rezoned to something before you can layer a PD on top of it. So typically you would see a PD and a preliminary plat at the same time, but because they can't do that until they get the ag piece of this rezoned. And I'm trying to verify, and I'm having a hard time doing it, maybe one of you guys know, is it just ag? I thought RA was also not approvable, it could not have a PD on RA, and I may be incorrect about that, but it certainly can't be on ag. And I've tried about 14 versions of search and haven't found it yet, so I'll keep looking. But if, in fact, an RA is allowable for a PD to be on top, Dara, do you know for sure?
I do. I have the section pulled up.
What section is it?
The section, if you look on page 229 of the Unified Development Code, it is C authorization 1B. A planned development is authorized in the RA district, but only as a conservation design in accordance with item G below, which provides more procedural guidance.
So you got to match. Pardon?
It is on page, oh gosh, I've just lost it. Page 229, letter C, authorization.
We still have to deal with, are we going to allow the zoning from ag to RA or ag to R1?
That's correct.
However, because they're writing their own ordinance, it really doesn't matter unless they don't change something and it has to go back to the underlying ordinances. Correct?
Yes.
So I guess it matters, but maybe it doesn't because they're going to write their own ordinance. We just haven't seen that yet.
Right.
Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Thanks, Mayor. What's the significant difference between R1 and RA?
It's mostly just a slight difference in lot size and sort of setbacks, meaning RA, and permitted uses. So you have, and I can pull them up so that I'm not speaking incorrectly.
I actually have that here. RA is 2 acres per lot. RR is 1 acre per lot. And R1 is 20,000 square feet, which is roughly a half an acre per lot. So consider each one of those. And the total lot size, total property size is?
This property.
126.47 acres.
Okay. So it's the difference between 250 at R1 max, 124 or 126 and or 62 if you were taking it at straight zoning. Remember, they're going to get to write their own, so.
With the conservation over.
Yeah. The one other thing that I would caution you about, and that what makes sense, is that once this is rezoned to something, if the PD never went forward or didn't pass, it would be a use by right at whatever level it wanted. So if you were to say RA, I'm okay with it being RA, 2 acres per lot. If nothing ever goes on there, I could be convinced to do the PUD that they want to do, which would be more like R1 with some conservation on it. But I don't want to leave that, I don't want to make it R1 unless I'm going to see a PUD I like. So that would be my caveat to you to be aware of.
So I believe, as I read about RR, RA, and R1, 2 acres, 1 acre, and 1/2 acre. So let's the Jackson residents that came up here and spoke, thank you. The Jackson Road residents, thank you very much. And the visual that you put up with that subdivision, that was not RR, RA, or R1. That was a conglomerate. That was like a regular subdivision. So how could that possibly qualify for one of these that we are asking us to redo? And if for some reason the people found a loophole in making that happen, let's say that whatever area that took up, and I don't know, but I'm just going to guess 12 acres. So if they take up 12 acres of some kind of loophole, and then what did that leave the rest of the 114 acres? Does that mean that at some point they can come back again and build all those houses that in the future? I just, if we did R1, that's one house per 1/2 acre. So how does all those houses get in that? I don't get it.
Mayor, just to clarify, are you asking how the R1 would correlate to that concept plan that was shown on the screen? I
think so. The concept plan did not show 2 houses per acre.
Right.
The concept plan showed a bunch of houses on it, like 4 houses on an acre. Regular R2 density. So I don't get how, if you're asking us to rezone something and that concept plan showed not what we're at, not would we be rezoning?
Yes, sir. So there's some layering happening here, right? So if someone were to rezone this property, if the BOMA were to approve the rezoning of the property, the applicant could come back and request a planned development. That is the intent that this applicant has expressed. And in submitting a concept plan, they're demonstrating their intent. We can't condition the rezoning of the property to that. It's simply the applicant's effort to demonstrate their intent for that property. So what's happening with that concept plan is the layering of a planned development, which to Ms. Caskey's point is essentially it's a customized zoning district that they are, that they would propose, where they create their own master plan and their zoning criteria associated with it. They're also proposing to utilize what's called the conservation design overlay. That is and essentially a tool that is available to folks in the UDC in certain areas that would allow them to take the property as a whole. Okay, how many units would the R1 yield me? So let's say it's 250 units. If they utilize the conservation overlay, they would be allowed to reduce the lot sizes so that they have smaller lot sizes and more open space that is preserved as a result of those smaller lot sizes. So whether it's straight R1 and 1/2 acre lots and 250 lots, or the PD with the conservation overlay, you have 250 lots, they're smaller in lot size, but they're essentially preserving all of this open space around the edges and within the property to either retain agricultural features on the land, the rural appearance of the property from streets or from neighboring properties. Does that make sense?
It does. So my follow-up comment will be, when I read in the UDC the explanation of R1, the different R's and the other things, I interpret that as if on R1, one house per half acre. And regardless if there's the loophole, you mentioned conservation. So if the builder or the developer says, hey, yeah, we're gonna sell you this, we're doing all this conservation. Oh yeah, citizens, that's great. But now because we did that, we can put all this higher density. I don't interpret the UDC like that. A half acre to me is R1, means one house per half acre. Not because you said, oh yeah, we're gonna make part of this conservation. So that's an easy no support from me. Alderman Fitter.
Thank you, Mayor. I think tonight we're really getting ahead of ourselves with the conversation around the concept plan. I mean, what's in front of us now and tonight is really the question of whether or not single-family homes is appropriate for this piece of property next to some schools. Until you look at any other school in Middle Tennessee, single-family homes is probably an appropriate use of land next to schools. It's certainly not appropriate for it to be industrial or commercial. You know, we've made a lot of comments and assumptions here about whether RA, RR, or R1 might be most appropriate for the land, but what we have before us right now is an R1 application from the applicant. What we haven't heard at all, and what I would like to hear, is from the applicant and their opinion on whether or not RA or RR is acceptable to them. And then if we get through this rezoning process, then we can talk about, you know, the appropriateness of a conservation overlay or not. So I think we're really far ahead of ourselves here, and I'd like to hear from the applicant because they've been talked to a lot about which zoning district for single-family homes might be most appropriate, but we haven't heard from them. So I don't know if you're making time for that here in a minute, but I would request it.
Alderman Linville.
I would also love to hear from the applicant as well.
The applicant come up, but while you're coming up, thank you. I will say this about, okay, so I will not support even a rezone on this because I believe when we grow our city, this would not meet responsible growth because we have enough, as far as I'm concerned, we hear from our citizens every day about you guys are not doing responsible growth, and the more that we add, we do not have the infrastructure to support it. Infrastructure includes roads, but more than that, right now in the city of Spring Hill, it includes water and sewer. And I believe we do not have the infrastructure to support another 200 homes or whatever, so I will not support a rezone because if we do that, as Ms. Caskey said, then we give somebody, whoever it is, in this case you, sir, use by right. So we lose. And I don't want to put ourselves in a posture of being a loser off the get-go. So, thank you, ma'am. So, sir, please identify yourself and you may speak.
Yeah, my name is Joe Epps. I'm with Anderson, Delk, Epps & Associates.
Joe who?
Epps, E-P-P-S.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll try to answer any questions that Board Member and Alderman may have.
Alderman Linville?
Yeah, I'd just love for you to address kind of the conversation that's happened around
Right.
the RA zoning versus the R1 zoning as it relates to the PD.
Yeah, the RA zoning, and I don't know of any property that's in Spring Hill that's zoned RA. I've not got the abilities to research it all in depth, but I've done a pretty deep dive on trying to find one piece that was zoned RA. So I don't know any that's zoned RA right now, but I think all the discussion so far of RA has been correct, that's a zoning district that's a 2-acre lot. It's basically what it is. RR, which is predominantly what's around this piece of property that's existing right now, that's 1-acre lot. And then what we requested is R1, which is 20,000 square foot lot. We've also tried to implement the conservative overlay on that, which means we would be limited to a density of whatever R1 would propose. If you look at the 126 acres under R1, which is 20,000 square foot lots, then the true density would be 275 lots. What we're requesting is 213 lots on that. If you looked at the RR, which is 1-acre lots, then the density would be limited to 126. If you look at the RA, 2-acre lots, density would be 63. To be able to provide the amount of open space, road infrastructure, sewer improvements, and do everything that the developer would like to do on it, he would like to have the R1 zoning, do 213 lots. I think it's going to be a benefit to the city for the expansion of the sewer system. He's going to be putting some money into the sewer system, expanding it down Mayland Moore Road to try to help to alleviate some of the problems that some of the houses that are on septic systems on out Mayland Moore Road have. I think there'd be some benefit that probably the city would end up with some of the open space on this. It's 50% open space, so that there's around 53 acres of open space proposed on this once you get to the development side of it. Why we submitted both was the staff, which we've submitted under a different staff than what's here now. The staff wanted to look at it as that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen would be guaranteed that that would be the plan that would be going over that, and that way that would be our right. We wouldn't have just a permitted by right or R1. We would have to build that plan certain as a plan development.
And so what I'm hearing is, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that regardless of whether it's R1 or RA, the PUD is gonna call out certain requests from relief from the zoning requirements for that given project, right?
That's correct.
And so, really, if the PUD is what you all intend to construct, the difference in the zoning between RA and R1 really doesn't matter for this project. It matters for some future project that may come through that's not the PUD.
It's
Is
a
that correct?
it's a density issue to us. We could only get 63 units under RA.
By right, correct, but not in the PUD process.
Well, no, even going through the conservation development, we're only allowed a density that's supported by the underlying zoning.
Yeah.
Okay,
So a PUD does not allow deviation from the density allowed under that zoning?
Not in this case.
It would allow them to change setbacks and lot sizes and how the lots are placed, et cetera, et cetera. But I think he's correct
Okay.
with
The way
broader
the ordinance
concept.
reads, it says
That's the question. Driving at.
the way the ordinance reads, it says the permitted residential density for the development as a whole is calculated as follows. First, determine the maximum single-family residential density of the underlying district by dividing the gross acreage by the minimum lot area required for a detached single-family dwelling of the underlying district. So that's how you come up with your permitted density on it.
Alderman Fitterer.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Alderman Linville's questioning really answered my open question that I would have asked you, Mr. Epps. So, whether the timing of a rezone is appropriate or not, I think is a different question than whether or not the land use is appropriate. So, I will stand by the statement that single-family homes next to school campuses is appropriate. If people want to opine that the timing of such is inappropriate, that's really a different matter. So I don't have anything further to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
I had one question for the applicant. So here's your land,
Yes,
and because it's a PUD, here's the homes, and you're squishing the homes into here, right? This part's being open, right?
A lot of open space.
A lot of open space. So my question is, what's the long-term planning with that open space land? Do you have a long-term plan?
To kind of maintain the whole premise behind the conservation development, we were going to try to farm it as far as cutting hay and things like that off the open space that was left. Try to work some type of agreement with the farmers in the area to cut that for hay. The whole premise under the conservation development is you group the lots in groups of 25 or less, and then you have a distance of at least 150 feet between lots. So there's several clusters of lots in there that are all separated by open space. And like I say, there's around for what we've done so far, about 53 acres open space in there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Epps. Okay.
So, Mayor, one of the questions the reason that we discuss these at this time is to determine if there is any additional information that you need or anything that you would like to propose. Zoning is your right. I think the Planning Commission has to react to the applicant's request. I do not think that's your responsibility. I think you can say, no, we're not going to do this, we're going to do this, or you want this, okay, we'll give it to you. But it is ultimately your discretion. So if you want us to propose a fill in the blank for the ordinance, if you want us to leave it as it is, it's currently proposed as R1. That is what the Planning Commission accepted. They did do a recommendation for an RA to be looked at instead of that. I have no idea why they picked RA and not RR. Lost on that. Maybe Alderman Fitterer can explain that a little bit. But if you need information, this is coming back to you in first reading at the next meeting. So if you're fine the way it is and you know what you're going to do and it's fine, we'll just run it through. If you need something else, this is the time to tell us.
Alderman Linville.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the other question that I would have is around kind of what we've heard tonight from Jackson Road and then the letter we received from the Murray Roads Department. I guess the question I have, I guess this would be for the applicant. Is there an alternative to using Jackson Road as a second entrance, as the way that you all have conceived the site?
We've widened out the entrance road. It's extra wide and everything else, and we've met with fire marshal and some of the emergency access. We think we've got that problem worked out as far as by making the ingress and egress a lot wider.
We cannot hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. I think we've got that worked out as far as the ingress and egress on that. So I don't think we would really ever access Jackson Road. It was always just sit there. I believe it's always been just discussed, that have access out there to it. And it's, from what it sounded like today, it might be that Jackson Road people would need it worse than the development would.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like Jackson Road is not crucial to the development as contemplated. Okay.
That's correct.
Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just clarify, so when it comes up to us in 2 weeks, we're not voting to change it to R1 PUD, we're voting to change it to R1, right?
Yes. And then you will see the PD come after some period of time.
After it goes through the Planning Commission?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll finish up with comments. I'll reiterate a couple of things that Alderman Fitterer, with your speaking of residential around a school, I completely agree with you, sir. I do believe that that is correct use in accordance with our documents to do that. So I don't have any issue with that. What I do have issue with, and I'll reiterate this, timing. There are things that we do or don't do with regards to timing. I believe right now, strongly believe, that the timing of this project is not a win for the citizens. It is not a betterment. In fact, it is a detriment because of the real issues that we have, that we learn about every day from staff with regards to infrastructure. So even though our residential around a school is appropriate, I cannot put something in the pipeline that eventually, I believe, that we will not have any control to further, because we'll get in some kind of legal thing, because it's happened before since I've been the mayor, and we couldn't stop it. And if we do this now, we are putting ourselves in a position where we will not be able to stop it because they will have use by right. So I will not support it because I believe the timing is not right. It is not a win for the citizens, in my opinion. Thank you. Moving on. Item number 1 of work session discussion. Discussion of ordinance to rezone 720 Beechcroft Road. Ms. Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor. This item was previously considered by the Planning Commission. The proposal is to rezone the property. Excuse me, let me just get my notes here. I didn't include them. They're from a commercial zoning district to I-1 to allow for the development and use of the property for industrial purposes. The Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation for denial to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, finding that the proposal was not consistent with Spring Hill Rising Comprehensive Plan, specifically the land use designation for mixed-use neighborhood. I can go into a little bit more of an explanation regarding the thinking or the recommendation of Spring Hill Rising, and particularly land use application of mixed-use neighborhood on one side of Beechcroft and industrial on the other side, but ultimately finding that the proposal is inconsistent with the policies and land use recommendations of the comp plan. Can answer any additional questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So the industrial is all relegated to the south of Beechcroft, correct?
That's correct.
And this is the only little spot they want industrial north of Beechcroft, and that's the basis of your staff recommendation denial.
The staff, that's the basis of the Planning Commission's recommendation for denial. The Planning Commission's purview is to evaluate the adopted policies, particularly for rezonings when considering changing, for lack of a better word, the laws on a property. In this case, the staff and the Planning Commission were unable to identify information, policies, goals, or recommendations in the comprehensive plan that would support a deviation in the land use on the north side of Beechcroft, particularly because there's a very large application of mixed-use neighborhood that's intended to be sort of drilled down upon with rezoning requests that are consistent with that land use designation. I think that from the staff's perspective, I do have to communicate this with a caveat that staff made this recommendation prior to me being on board. But from the staff's perspective, this is on the edge of the mixed-use neighborhood land use designation. By crossing Beechcroft, we're starting to chip away at the edges of that land use designation of mixed-use neighborhood, the future potential of commercial uses along Beechcroft that would then transition into residential uses further north of Beechcroft, introducing the industrial zoning district on the north side of Beechcroft at this location could create conflicts in future residential development of that surrounding area. Sort of planning policies, goals, and recommendations strongly advise against locating industrial right next to residential, particularly those conventional industrial types of uses, large warehousing, other uses that have the potential to produce light, glare, noise, traffic, dust, odors, vibrations, things like that we see with those larger I-1 developments.
Alderman Fitterer.
Thank you, Mayor. Vice Mayor Pomeroy, maybe it'll help you with your recollection a little bit, but this was a discussion item last meeting as well. The applicant's representative was here, and if you remember, he tried to make a case that the comprehensive plan was dated, which we corrected him on, said it had been amended in December of 2020, and he did email me after the fact and said he was wrong about that. It was recently amended in December of 2020. So as Ms. Sanders said, the basis of the Planning Commission's recommendation denial is inconsistency with the comprehensive plan. There is a neighboring property zoned industrial, but creating more inconsistently zoned properties doesn't do anything to advance the goals of the comprehensive plan. So I think the Plan Commission was correct to recommend denial. I'll be voting against this project myself whenever it actually gets to a voting agenda.
We will advance it to first reading at your next meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Moving on, item 2, discussion of economic development consultant selection. Mr. Hellier.
Yes, everybody should have received the packet ahead of time. I bring your attention to the memo or that speaks to the fact that we started this search or this RFQ back in March. We did an evaluation. We put out to advertise it. We also submitted it out for 20 different consultants in the field and received 4 responses. The evaluation committee reviewed those 4 responses and unanimously selected and recommended the company ahead of that you see, JSNA, which is a joint venture. One is to predominantly drive the process of the economic development plan, and the second is a group that comes in and does a lot of the facilitation. They do a lot of the community interviews and taking a look at each of the various groups that are within to get information from. So the question before the group is, do you have questions about what we've done and the recommendation that we've, or the company that we put before you?
Alderman Fitter.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start off by saying I would like to support this kind of proposal, but I do have a lot of questions. And
I understand.
Specifically the lead consultant, do we have any samplings of their work, something that's currently being used and being implemented and not just something that's under development? There's, I think it was a couple bullet points. It sounds like somebody had a phone call with somebody in Maryville of current work. But I'm looking for completed work that's been implemented and the outcomes from that. When I go to the consultant's website and look at their feature products, there's a lot of really good projects in there, but they're not economic development projects.
Right.
So I don't know that I've seen anything that makes me feel we're going to get a good outcome here yet.
Okay. So to your point, a lot of these consultants do broad different kinds of activities and different responding to different RFQs and different responses they have. We came across for a broad overview plan for the entire city of Spring Hill. The closest thing we had from them was Maryville, which was a conversation where they were a subcontractor. So what this is, and of course, Mayor Alderman Fitter, you understand that we also have CT consultants working on the TCRC. So there would be some combined effort in doing some of that coordination. Now, to your point with what deliverables they had, we do not have, we could not find a specific requirement. However, I will say that it was challenging to get that from any of these.
Do we have the Maryville scope of work? See how close it might align to
we don't, but I'd be happy to get
what we're
that.
thinking. Because what is available, the one economic project on their website is a community in Florida, and it largely just looks like it's a mapping exercise, which is important work and needs to be done, but we can do it in-house for a lot less than $140,000. So.
Right, I would agree.
Thank you, Alderman Fitter. Thank you. I mean, that was a great thing to say. That doesn't mean you're done. Thank you. That was a great thing to say.
I'm not done. Within what's being proposed, a couple of the things that were pretty alarming to me, and again, I've been up here long enough, I've seen a couple of different versions of this effort, and all of them have gone very poorly. You know, right off the gate, it talks about 12 one-on-one interviews with key economic development stakeholders. I don't know how they got to 12, but that's not even close to the right number. I mean, by the time you interview the board, you're down to 3, and there's just absolutely no way I 12 is just not enough, and your only solution to that is telling certain board members their opinions isn't valued, which isn't going to lead to us adopting anything. So that's got to be addressed, and I'm going to guess from the consultant's perspective, it's going to impact costs, and we just need to weigh out what it really is.
I can share two things while you're on that particular point. There were a lot of Zoom calls recommended, and that was kind of universally represented by the 4 applicants. So this one in particular, I started to drill down because this is the one that we selected, and I asked questions more to, how would you be handling these interviews? And I said, how often would you be coming? And we started talking about the period in which they would be on the ground for 3 to 4 days at a time in each of these visits, and try to schedule each of the groups that we'd be meeting with. So
we've had groups in the past who've come back to us and said, well, we said in the agreement we'd give you 12 interviews. We gave you 12. We're not giving you a 13th. Hopefully we don't get that from this group, but, you know,
right.
Consider I have some scar tissue around that. And,
understood.
And 12's not the right number. Further on, it goes into talking about focus groups and a Spring Hill Advisory Committee and a Spring Hill Implementation Committee. Similar thought, unless we're defining those committees in advance and agreeing in advance who the correct participants are, every time we've gone, you know, down this economic plan path, we've gotten to those groups, and we get to a point where people who feel like they need to be included or excluded, and if we're not defining those groups in advance and defining what their role is in the process, it's going to go sideways fairly quick, right? Just like a couple discussion items ago, we're way down into the details talking about a concept plan that might not even be a thing for another several months. So let's define what those groups are out front and not figure it out when we get there. I think those are really, really problematic areas where if we're going to get to a plan that we're actually going to adopt and become policy, we need that sorted out on the front end. General comment about them identifying it as a 2040 economic development plan. I don't know if they're just copying the timeline on our comprehensive plan or not, but you know, I generally view, you know, long range planning to be a 20 to 25 year process. I'm not very good at math, but I know 2040's not 25 years from now. In the agreement itself, I know Mr. Carter didn't look at it because there's no way he'd put it in our packet. I won't get into what the problems are because I know he can spot the same ones I did, but I like what we're trying to accomplish, but what's in front of us, I see resulting in something that's going to be difficult to get board cohesion around and board acceptance around. Right. Adoption to make it policy is going to be challenging, and if you're hitting all those roadblocks before it even becomes policy, implementation is just never going to happen. So I would really like to go back and know we've got a group in place who has delivered upon what we're hoping to achieve, and then we've structurally got it set up right.
Alderman Filler, can I ask, if 12's not the right number, do you have a recommendation of what the right number is?
I don't know, but I mean, it's at least double that, right?
I was thinking 25 was the number that I was thinking about. You got to cap it at some point.
Sure, but you know, you start with 9 of us, and you know,
then you add
we've
the
got
5 planning commission members.
Yeah, and then we've got really 4 to 5 projects around town that are really going to be the key economic drivers of this community for the next 25 years. Yep. Those are all stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's 1 or 2 apiece. I mean, so we're at 25 without even talking to a Chamber of Commerce
Right.
participant. I don't know that planning commissioners need to be involved, right? Unless we're going to get recommendations back from this group that suggest changes to land use. And if we're going to go down that route, I'd rather go hire a consultant who can map out revenue and expenses by land use, a Urban 3 or somebody similar to that. You know, the key projects around town, you know, I'm thinking Suitcase, you know, June Lake, Smash, the hospital, Harvey Park is a 100 and whatever acre site that's already zoned C4. I mean, that's going to become a big economic thing. Those types of properties, with where they're located, with the roadway infrastructure that goes to them, we don't need a plan as much to go implement something on those, because the state's going to be involved with it as too. I mean, we need to get a good idea about what we want to be as a community, which goes back to the comprehensive plan and our land use planning. I don't know what document these people can produce that we don't already have. I mean, they've got some TAPRC information, but we got that anyways. And hiring a consultant is a good thing when we don't have the in-house talent to do it, Mayor. So I know you're smiling over there because I just bagged on consultants again, but I fully support hiring consultants as opposed to bringing on FTEs that stay on for numerous budget cycles when we're talking about niche products. I'm just pointing out that in this case, what I think we need in who we're being asked to evaluate is not a good match from what I can tell tonight.
Alderman Linville.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess one of the questions I would have is, what distinguished this group that made staff think that they were a better fit than the other applicants that submitted proposals?
There were two standouts. We got a lot of qualifications and then rattle off the qualifications and what they've done. This group was more of a responsive group to doing their homework, drilling down to who we were, what we were about, what our objectives were. We gave them some key points to what was just brought up as to what the makeup was of our city, establishing that baseline, and what that baseline represented as to where do we shape from where we go from where we are now. You know, there's some to Alderman Fitter's point, there are things that we can't change. There are things that are in motion, and those things need to be identified. They would consider that to be part of their discovery, but it really is part of our discovery. And to map that first is, I think, a good point of being able to use the money more wisely, maybe having more information to set the stage for who we really are going to use. I'm not saying these people aren't good. They're very good. And the differentiator was that they just impressed us more with the way they presented themselves and the way that they were keying in on what we were talking about more as opposed to what they had done.
Got it. Yeah, when I looked at their website, and obviously I wasn't sitting in the proposals or whatnot, I didn't see a ton of specific economic development strategic project plans for citywide. So I agree with Alderman Fitter there. One thing that did stick out is that they worked with the Tennessee ECD department.
Yeah.
Do you know any more about what their scope of work was with the ECD department? Because obviously that's an important.
It is my understanding that they did some of the rural economic development initiatives for ECD.
There's the perfect fit was not there. It's safe to say. But we had done the best we could to define what we thought we needed to go to, what we were looking to perform for the city of Spring Hill. What we got back was maybe not as robust a response as we would have liked, but drilling down to who we felt was most impressive, this was the group.
We have an alternative. We have $165,000 in this situation for this proposal. We can do a rollover of that budget and go out a little later. I'm going to take off my city administrator hat and put on my consultant hat for a minute, if you would. This is the stuff I did when I've been in private consulting. And I'm not sure. So the first strategic plan that I did for MTAS was a true community strategic plan that wasn't a comprehensive plan. The second strategic plan I did for Gatlinburg was an economic strategic plan that ended up looking a lot like a strategic plan, because in the end, all economic development is driven around the quality of life of the community and the ability to attract people to that quality of life. I continue to question whether now is the right time to do this, because, as Mr. Fitterer said, I think there is a tremendous amount of momentum driving us in some very specific directions, and I don't know what a consultant is going to tell us that those folks aren't going to tell us. Actually, I'll leave on my consultant hat for a moment, and you know what I'm going to tell you need? Wider roads and more parks.
Agreed.
Huh?
Can we please give consultant Caskey $140,000 for that?
I'll take it. But yeah, I mean, that's what the ultimate end of this is going to be, because we don't have enough parks per capita to attract the quality of life checkbox that we need, and we have a reputation for traffic that I don't know that is deserved, and I don't know that we can control where it is deserved, right? I mean, 31 is our problem, and that's not in our purview. So I guess I'm questioning and whether we want to spend money for somebody to tell us what we already know. What's the value of that? And I think there may be a day. I think what Spring Hill is really missing is what Jim Hellier's here to work on. Creating unique small business opportunities that create an identity for us that isn't what everybody else has. And because we're getting all the attention from those guys. Now, do I think we need help on corporate relocates? Yeah. And I think that's why we're going to pay Williamson Inc. to do that. Do I think we're going to need help on Suitcase for industrial relocates? Yeah. Or developments? That's why I think we're working with the state on that project. I don't want to poo-hoo strategic planning or economic strategic planning, because frankly, I've made a good living off of it in different years, okay? And it has value. I just don't know that it's now for us with the dollars we have available. Could we double that and get a different quality of application? Maybe. Are we going to get any better results? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm looking at it from my consultant perspective. Could a bigger, better firm see something I'm not seeing? Yes. But when I say a bigger, better firm, you're going to have to double the budget to get there. So I think we need a choice. Put this forward, get more answers, and come back to discuss it before we put it forward. Roll the budget and do it again in a few months. Increase the budget and try it again, or pass on it for right now. I think those are your 5 options, and we need some direction.
No, that's fair. That is fair. I think the things that but I've been banging this drum for a long time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the things that we're lacking in right now is any clear direction on what economic development activity do we need to be working on. So, like even some of the if you're thinking baseball, some of the singles, right? Like making sure we have good site lists, making sure we have data that we're evaluating, like some of those sort of things that we may have knowledge in house of, like how to move forward and put those essential systems in place. I have not heard that yet.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
From my perspective, that's where I think there is potential value in this sort of exercise. We don't know, from what I've heard thus far, we don't know the first and second step to economic development before we get to the broader, what does this need to be, right? And ultimately, right now, the way that we're evaluating economic development projects is, what does the board think of it? And the board turns over every now and then when we have elections. You know, we do that pretty regularly around here, every 2 years. And so I think Spring Hill would benefit from not only establishing the foundation, but also trying to figure out how do we as a community want to evaluate whether something is a good fit to be pursuing as a project to bring to Spring Hill that fits with our desires for quality of life and all of those sorts of things.
If I could react to that.
Absolutely.
Since Jim's been on board, he started working on the exact stuff, the foundational stuff, and spending $140,000 to tell us to do that, because they're not going to do it.
Sure.
They're going to tell us we need to do it. We already know we needed to do it. We just had to find somebody who could do it and who had the time to do it. And Jim has been working on that. We've got an economic database going now. We're starting to line out all of that sort of information. Somebody once told me, and I've never forgotten it, cities don't build cities. Landowners and developers build cities. And while it is important for us to know what projects to go after, the reality is we don't get to go after much because we don't go do much. We take leads and we follow them up if we think they're in our best interest. I don't know that having an economic plan is going to change. Let me wind back. If nobody had ever envisioned the chance of USTA coming here, and it wasn't even a blip on our radar of an economic plan that we had, would we have passed on it because it wasn't in our economic development plan? I don't think the answer is, yeah, we would have passed. I think we would have said, hey, wait a minute, this is a great new potato. Let's go try to see if we can fry it. You know, because it was an opportunity we couldn't wrap our heads around. We'd have never wrapped our heads around it in an economic plan. We just wouldn't have. So I think there probably does need to be a framework for what we're looking for, but I'll be honest with you, I really do believe that with Dara's comprehensive planning experience, my economic development experience, and his boots on the ground experience, we might be able to bring you something that would.
I would love to hear more about that because, like I said, when Mr. Hellier came on board, one of the primary discussion was around small business development,
and it still is.
And so that if we have that expertise in house, great. That's great, especially for some of the basics around economic development. I have not had visibility into seeing that progress or develop.
And that's because we're at step 3 of a 25-step plan, and there's not that much to show you yet, but there's a lot of stuff going on. And it's not at the big level. I mean, I'm not telling you it is.
Correct.
It's focused on small stuff. It's focused on unique small stuff. It's focused on giving folks a helping hand to get through the process. But there are also larger issues that I think we can put onto paper. So what if we did this? What if for right now we carried over the budget? Okay, so we will retain the money. So that would be an amendment in the final budget to add the 140,000 over. So we do that, and then and if you're okay with that, we'll do something with that if the board is okay with that. But then we will try to spend the next 6 to 7 months showing you what we can do collectively. You know, I got a bigger job to do than be the economic development consultant for the city, but I certainly can help. If I hadn't been here, I'd have bid on the work that JS&A did.
Yeah, and here for me, I think my concern around the urgency of this right now is we're on the precipice of big opportunities, right, with some of the premier sites in the state. And I don't want to miss out on something because we don't have the demographic data or the sites that we're marketing.
So the reality is we do have all that. Yeah. It may not be available to you, but we've invested in Placer. We've already used Placer to use that information to help. We know where our big sites are, so we're not at issue with those. I'm talking to site selectors or consultants on a regular basis on those big issues, and that's not always easily shared at a public setting. I try to keep you up to date on the stuff that is happening, but the landowners are doing a lot of this, and we're feeding them, right? We're giving them what they need to know. I've got a guy coming in next week, you know, to talk about stuff. But I think I know what you're looking for. Give us a chance. We now have the staff in place to do it.
Okay.
I don't think we did before.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't think we did before.
We did not.
Yeah. But I think that has changed.
Yeah. Okay.
I would also like to add that in addition to the staff that are in place, we also have, don't forget, the partnerships with our 3 Chamber of Commerces as well as Ms. Thornton's business. So we have a lot of boots on the ground already. I would like to add that. Alderman Fitter.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, Alderman Linville, to Ms. Caskey's point, the big stuff's already come to us. I mean, I think you know the caliber of people who've already expressed interest in June Lake and Suitcase, Legacy Point, all that. I would be in favor of rolling this. You know, there might be some relatively small dollar opportunity to go find a retired site selector and put the package and playbook together, make sure we're not missing anything. That kind of package, even if it's generic, and then we got to feed in site-specific information, I think might give Alderman Linville the level of comfort he's looking for, because you're right, you have championed this, you know, your entire time on the board, and, you know, when you came on the board, you know, a lot of the big stuff we just named was still a couple years out from being public, and the environment's, I think, changed dramatically since you got on, for the better, right? So if we rolled this, maybe there's some low cost things to go get a you know, some retired site selector on, make sure that the package is together right. And then to the points that were made, I mean, the things we're really looking for you to do are the smaller things that add character into a community. And those things all have homes in Kedron Square and June Lake and Legacy Point as well. And definitely on top of the downtown redevelopment. And that'd be my recommended path forward here, because I don't think going back to JNS and saying, well, show us your economic plan is going to get us any information that's different.
And notice, as many times as this has come up, I never made the offer to do it in-house. That was never an offer I made to Alderman Linville, right? And so I'm making it now because I think we've got the right team together. And if we have a little budget to go hire somebody kind of as a part-time or a small consultant agreement to look at something or whatever, I think we might be able to achieve everything that you want to achieve and have it be much more specific to us than what we might get otherwise.
I look forward to hearing more about that.
I'm also happy to bring, as I mentioned, a quarterly report to BOMA that will give you an idea of some of the relationship, synergistic movement we've made in the community between small business owners. So, I mean, we can call that out, show you what it means and what it means to them. So we can go from there too.
Thank you, Mr. Hellier.
Thank you.
Item number 3 reads discussion of development services cost recovery. No name assigned.
Yes, but Ms. Sanders is ready and able to talk. We have flooded her desk.
It's okay. I have a big desk.
So while she's passing these out, I would suggest to you that we are aiming towards the cost recovery percentage that we talked about at the previous meeting. But we need to walk before we run. And so we took the low-hanging fruit, which is the planning side of things. And we're going to ask that you give us another bite at the apple on the engineering side. This information will, if you agree to this or if you make recommendations for this, this will be updated into the annualized budget fee resolution that will be on the next agenda as part of the budget adoption. So that's what we're getting ready for. We will have to amend that resolution when we bring back the engineering info, but for right now, this is the starting spot at that. Ms. Sanders.
Thank you, Ms. Caskey. So since the last BOMA meeting and work session discussion, we've spent some time tackling the planning fees. I think that Ms. Caskey identified that we are very low in terms of cost recovery. That is due to the number of hours that my entire team spends on accepting an application, processing that application, disseminating the information, reviewing it, engaging with the applicant, getting it ready for Planning Commission, ultimately preparing a staff report, noticing, all of the heavy lift things that it takes an entire team to bring an item forward to the Planning Commission, and inevitably the BOMA in many situations, which is the reason why you've seen my face here at this podium so many times this evening. So we've pulled together a spreadsheet or a chart, if you will, which we've passed out that identifies the current fees, an estimated actual cost for planning staff. Now, this is not post-entitlement. In general, it is just getting a project from application submittal to either Planning Commission or BOMA for final action. And then we have the proposed fee. I think that given where our fees are today, being so low in terms of cost recovery, we don't want to shock folks. And so I think we talked about 1 or 2 steps up for fees to get to more of a 60 to 70% cost recovery percentage. For some, as you can see in this chart, we're looking at for a higher cost recovery percentage than some other application types. I'll point out concept plans and pre-application meetings. We're not proposing a higher jump for those fee types or application types because we want to incentivize folks coming to us early in the game and showing us their intent, checking in with us early in the process. That's when we get to take a pretty good look at the intent of an applicant and provide some feedback that may help with some course correction if we see that someone's sort of drifting off into an area that may not be something that you all could support or get behind. We're also looking, ironically, since we've discussed the PD process a bit this evening, we're looking at the PD application process and the fee structure primarily for streamlining purposes. So, you know, as we've touched on this evening, the plan development tool is for unique projects that don't necessarily fit within the box of our standard zoning districts that have been adopted as part of the Unified Development Code. A plan development application is, in essence, a customized zoning district that is intended to yield something different or unique that may not be accomplished through typical zoning. And because someone is essentially coming to us with a customized zoning district, the staff needs to spend a bit more time looking at that, vetting it, making sure that the risk to reward ratio is palatable for the city and the community. So when we compare PD applications and the fees that we currently collect with the time that this staff needs to be investing in the review of those types of applications, as well as the fees that are collected by our neighbors, we are pretty low, and you know, the cost recovery for those applications is substantially lower than the average 30%. The last point I want to make is for public notice fees. Before I answer any questions that you might have, I'm really just sort of pointing out some of the bigger ticket items or some of the areas where we're really missing out on some cost recovery opportunities. That's public notification. Right now, we don't collect any fees for public notification. That is not the normal practice of cities our size or of our neighboring cities. I'll have to just point out that this is the only city I've ever worked in that covers the public notification fees for Planning Commission and BOMA for these applications.
And that's every deferral, we cover the fees.
That's right. So, for example, if someone requests to defer their application 5 times, which is 4 or 5 times, which is something very similar has happened just this year, we are burning through newspaper notification, printing the sign materials, having staff go out and actually install the sign. You know, we're looking at we're proposing 100% cost recovery on public notification. The majority of our customers, meaning our applicants, are you know, used to paying for that, so I don't anticipate a significant level of heartburn there, since it is an industry standard. I'll stop talking now and let you do the talking, and I'll be here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. So, great spreadsheet. On line item 2 of the spreadsheet, it's site plan residential, GFA. What does that stand for?
Gross floor area.
Okay. And then line item 3, non-residential, the proposed fee is 600 base. So non-residential, but the estimated cost is $2,000 to $5,000. So do you think that's enough? I mean, I would alter that to be more, because if it's non-residential and the cost to do that, $2,000 to $5,000, opposed to residential, which is substantially less, I would raise that. but you're the expert, and I don't know how you came up with that number, but I think that's a little low.
Mayor, I think this, we worked together on this, and what I was trying to do, most of your small businesses are going to be site plans.
Okay.
And so one of the things we did was instead of gross floor area, we went to impervious surface.
Yep.
And so the bigger the lot, the
Yeah.
more parking lot. And so we were trying to get them to pay that way as opposed to in that initial cost to try to support small business. Now, you could also raise that for larger businesses and put a small business something in there and that we could itemize separately. We just stuck with what we had and we didn't invent a new one.
Right, and to build on that, some cities differentiate or they have an application fee based on lot size. So typically, if a property is an acre or two or less, right, 2 acres, 1 acre or less, we're looking at a small business. And they're probably spending a lot of money to develop that smaller lot. We're also dealing with a less complex non-residential project. The bigger the property, the more complex it is, and the more time our staff has to evaluate every aspect of that project. Is the access safe? Does the circulation make sense? Are we creating safe and efficient and logical site circulation? Does the building design make sense? Is it intuitive? Is it of high quality? Is it reducing the need for large signs? I could go on and on and on in terms of the complexities of larger developments. So, but it's basically how you want to start carving that bird. You can differentiate between a small site or a larger site, or you can evaluate it by impervious surface, which again is going to get you to that larger, more complex development project.
So thank you for that, Ms. Caskey and Ms. Sanders, because I totally support small business, and to get to that, I withdraw my increasing that fee based on the impervious explanation. Outstanding. Small business, good to go. Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
Thanks, Mayor. Does anybody know when the last time these were updated? How long has it been?
2019.
2019? Was that recent? Okay.
That's 5 years ago, and cost had gone up dramatically for everybody.
Okay.
It's not 2009. Let's,
I would also I'm trying to kind of if a resident wants to add a deck or you go through those little parts, does this touch it? Does this touch where would that be? Where would that fall under?
So for planning, the only time planning would see a deck is if it doesn't meet the zoning criteria, meaning their home probably takes up most of their lot or it's set back way far in the lot and they're needing to ask for a variance. We've accounted for that as well. So if you look at the last page, it's variance per request for relief, which is the standard approach today. We're proposing to bump it up from $100 application fee to $250. We're still we're still eating a bit of that cost, but those are single-family homeowners. They're invested in our community, and this is for the improvement and enjoyment of their property, not for typically a profit on their property.
Thanks. You answered the question. I went through that process last year. I wanted to make sure we're not gigging the homeowners too bad on it. Thanks. I'm fine with that number.
One other comment from me, Ms. Sanders. So just to confirm on your spreadsheet, the fourth line from the bottom on your spreadsheet, the cost went down. That was intentional, correct? It's the only one that went down.
On the second page?
Second page, current cost $350 down to $250.
Easement by separate instrument?
Yes, ma'am.
I would have to go back to our notes. I don't recall why that went down. that may be an error on my part when entering the data.
Alderman Fitterer.
Thank you, Mayor. Typically, doesn't the city gain something when an easement's put in place? So I don't know. Either Ms. Sanders or Ms. Caskey, can you talk about how the estimated cost was arrived at? I know we saw a chart from Mr. Hughes several months ago that I would think is no longer accurate with our streamlined or soon-to-be streamlined development review process. But can you just talk to how we got to the estimated cost?
So Ms. Sanders, and I'm going to take this so she doesn't have to talk about it, she went through that spreadsheet and she talked to staff in the short time she's been here and revised that spreadsheet.
Okay.
And applied the same cost calculations.
So same methodology, but done with your look at
Yes.
whether or not that spreadsheet was as efficient as it should be.
And we did that, and we talked about this right now because she is the only senior planner we have. We have rated some of these costs at her salary. We know that those will go down some when we can find her staff, which is why we were not trying to get to 100%. Now, there are a couple of places in here that we really went up, and we really went up because we wanted to make people think twice about doing it. Extensions to vested rights being one of the ones that jumped to mind the quickest. I want you to think, do I want to gamble on that? But most of the rest of them, we've left some room.
Sure.
Because we think their costs are going to go down.
Sure. I think most of the other points I was going to make have already been addressed. I mean, site plan concept and neighborhood concept plan or optional submissions, I would be right on board with keeping them as low as possible. I would maybe even look at these and say, take them back down to where they are. Because, I mean, we want people submitting those. You know, we don't want costs to you know, make them avoid that behavior. Vice Mayor Pomeroy hit on the variances. I'd suggest maybe a third category there. Maybe there's an owner-occupied residential, and then a residential, and then a non-residential. Again, because if we're talking about a homeowner, tax-paying voter putting a deck on, I want to make it easy. As far as the public notice, map printing, document print, when we're talking about cost, are we going to be inclusive of staff time and effort as well, and not just
Yes, sir.
the advertising costs? Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
So direction, Ms. Caskey?
Yeah, I heard a request for a couple of changes. We'll check on that one, that easement instrument, see what's going on there. Kind of like the idea of doing an owner-occupied structure versus something else. I may.
I'm sorry for the zoning text amendment. Do we need to leave it in for city initiated if we're going to do cost accounting?
No, I don't think so.
All the costs would come back to you or us.
Yeah. I don't want to make planning and zoning an internal service fund, please. So the other thing that I think I heard, and I think I want to add something here, is I think we ought to add on the site plan side, I think we ought to maybe create some sort of a small lot site plan that has a lower rate than even 600, and maybe we take the non-residential base fee up a little bit, maybe up to the 1,000 for the larger lot commercials. So I think we'll add those, and then we'll pour all that into the resolution. And then if you want to make amendments because you don't agree with them, you can do that at the time of the adoption, which will be at the next meeting. Are we on board with everybody on that?
Is this something by resolution, by ordinance?
This is by resolution.
So just the math on that site plan non-residential. assuming an 80% impervious surface, an acre site would be $944. 5-acre site would be $2,320.
Okay, let us take a look at that. And let us compare it to what we already have and see where we come out.
Yeah, I'd like to use some, we wanted to use this as a baseline just to see, are you okay with this approach? What I'd like to do is pull a few examples of past projects and give you an estimate on what the fees would have been for that project, if that's okay, Ms. Geske. Okay.
So lastly, resolution 1, if it passes, and I would support this passing, it becomes law at that day, correct?
July 1.
Nobody's grandfathered.
Right, nobody who hasn't already paid a fee is grandfathered, and you pay new fees starting July 1. This is as of July 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sanders.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Alderman Linville.
I echo a lot of the other comments that have already been made. The question I had is, I know this is the first step, right? Do we have any projection for like what the next step would look like as far as walking those fees up?
Yes. I'd say we take a look at the first 6 months of the fiscal year. We compare what we've collected in fees to what we've spent in staff time. That's the value of cost accounting. And then we take a look at it. And if we're roughly where we want to be, we go, good, we'll just keep monitoring it. If we go, we've got a ways to go, then we come back with a proposal to get where we want to be.
Okay.
I like it. Thank you, Ms. Sanders.
Thank you.
Next item, which is 4, reads discussion of the interlocal agreement, Spring Hill Crossings, dedicated taxes. Ms. Caskey.
So you are entering into an interlocal agreement with your IDB to collect the tax on behalf of the IDB and then remit it appropriately per the TIF agreement that the IDB has approved. So all we're doing is agreeing to be the tax collecting agent and to take on that responsibility. This is standard. I will tell you, this is the first time I've ever had to do an interlocal to do it, but I think it's more correct. But it is the way it works in everywhere. And Mr. Carter may have more opinion about this than I did.
Now, I'm familiar with this. I've done this in other jurisdictions I've been involved with in the past. Both Mr. Bly, who represents the IDB, and myself looked and vetted the agreement, and we think it's appropriate.
So the plan is to get it in front of you tonight. It's going to IDB on next Tuesday, and then it'll come back to you for approval in a resolution form at the meeting in the next 17th.
Alderman Linville.
Thank you, Mayor. This does not have to go back through Murray, correct?
No, sir. We can all be thankful for that.
Okay, thank you. We have a plan on that one. So last item, Ms. Sasson, if you'll approach the podium, please. Item 5, which is discussion to support request from the well regarding the Whole Hog Festival.
I want to make 2 comments to set this up for Shelley. Come on up to the podium. So the state law has a requirement that if you give a nonprofit organization money for their purposes, you must collect all this data. Nonprofit statements, all that. Board of directors, it was a fairly lengthy list.
I think we complied and
You
got
did.
something today. It was
you
really
did.
quick
You-
turnaround.
according to April, you did.
It's really quick.
So, but I want to make sure, because this is the first one we've done since I've been here, direct request. So, when we contract with a nonprofit, which we do on several different iterations, we are paying them for a service that is not unlike paying Home Depot or Thomas and Hutton or somebody else. We're exchanging money for service. We have not requested that they do all this paperwork or go through this process. When they have been, and then we give the Parks and Rec Board a certain allocation which they use to co-sponsor events. And when they co-sponsor that event, they don't have to go through this process because the city is actually now participating, so they're spending their own money. The Parks and Rec Commission is out of money this year. I think they're down to their last, yeah. So, I have never heard what the well was requesting for contribution for this event. So we put it on here to cover ourselves for the paperwork that needs to be done and the fact that the law requires you to vote on it, not for staff to say, yeah, you can do that. So that is a requirement of the law when you're giving money for one of those other two options. So you have two choices. You can direct me to transfer money from my contingency to the Parks and Rec Committee, and they can co-sponsor it, and we can be done with it. Or they can request the money tonight, and you could agree to give it to them. And then if you do that, then we have to do a budget amendment to authorize that, and you have to do a resolution. So those are your choices.
Alderman Fitter.
How much money are we talking about?
Oh, gosh, you're not going to let me give my speech or anything here, but...
What, you want to give your speech, and then I'll ask you how much money we're talking about? Absolutely.
Okay, I think it's important to establish the why, if we may. First of all, I just want to give a big shout out to you guys. Thank you for the work you're doing. I know everybody here has other jobs, and thank you for what you're doing for our city. I feel like sometimes I wear a gazillion hats, 2 campuses, lots of employees, thousands of volunteers, and the work you're doing tonight kind of has my head spinning, so thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm here today to ask your help. That's really why I'm here, and I'd like to ask it 3 different ways. 1 as our city leaders, 2 for a specific event that I think is going to benefit the city, and the 3rd is as individual community members here. If I may just give 1 minute real quickly on the story of the well. We have been in Spring Hill for 18 years, and I don't think most people realize that. We started a local church when there was 11,000 people in the city. As we know today, our city is much larger. As the needs of the city has grown, so has the work of the well. When I started at the well 5 years ago, we were serving 150 to 200 families a month through our food pantry. We just finished May. We served 1,200 families last month through our food pantry. So that's a 10 times growth almost there. Our budget when I started was $200,000. In the last 5 years, our budget this year is $3.5 million, and that's just for our Spring Hill campus. And so to keep up with the need in our community, we're having to do different things. The work we're doing, I think, is important. We are doing what a health department would normally do. We do not have a health department here. We're the largest social services agency in Spring Hill. We also work with a lot of volunteers who come into the city of the Spring Hill to serve at the well. We have between 50 and 75 volunteers that come here every day to serve at the well. And so what I'm asking for today is an opportunity to partner together in the work that the well does. In the past, multiple years ago, the city helped sponsor nonprofits. We do not need the money from the city to survive. We're a healthy organization. But I think we do bring value to the city in our Whole Hog Festival, and that would ultimately help our work. We produce the largest event for the city of Spring Hill. It's 3 times the size of Experience Spring Hill. Last year we had 8,000 people who came, and this work does directly fund our work. I had originally asked for $10,000, Mr. Fitter. That would be something that I think would benefit the city, bringing families here to a community event, which helps with the economic work we're trying to do into our city, and that we're hosting events. The well has also done drive-in concerts for our city where we've had 2,500 people, and so it's a high-quality event, and I would love to be able to say that as we support our community, I'd really like to feel like the city is supporting the well, either through your city leadership and what we're doing, and maybe advocating for you personally. would sure mean a lot to me if I could get this board of leaders to come to the well and understand the work and the need in our community. That would be a big blessing to me. So that's why we're here today. Thank you.
Alderman Fitterer.
Thank you. So see, now I don't have to ask my question. I guess I should go. You know, I've never been to the well, but you know how many times my wife has been there, so I think I
would love to have you
fairly
come.
well. We got to do a second reading of the budget amendment anyways in 2 weeks. The resolution's not a big deal. We just heard we're talking about outside visitors coming in. I was trying to pull up how much is in the tourism fund balance. I would probably take it out of there. Do the budget amendment and expend it by resolution for the whole hog festival, because we're promoting a event that draws people.
Yep, it's a legitimate expense. I hadn't thought of that one.
Vice Mayor Pomeroy.
So if we allocate that via tourism funds, they'd all have to spend it on the whole hog fest, correct?
We would use it to produce the event, to do the advertising, the marketing, or whatever guidelines you gave us. That help us produce it.
They can produce the whole event or use it in any way that.
It costs us a lot more. Probably costs us about $70,000 to put on this event, so it's a substantial amount of money.
Alderman Murray.
So is that something that we would, like, so the 15,000 that we have in Parks and Rec, we're not talking about that. We're talking about taking it out of.
I am absolutely trying to figure out in my head, and I'm going to look at Mr. Carter and ask him, although you filled out the paperwork.
Yes, honestly, it was so last minute we got it today.
Yeah.
I have not been able to eye it in case, and so if there might be something that we did incorrectly, or you could let me know.
Ms. Goad said it
Yeah.
looked good.
Okay.
But I'm trying to determine, particularly in light of the tourism funds, if the resolution wouldn't be to support the whole hog festival with a contribution of $10,000 to co-sponsor the event. Would you be okay with that?
That's really what I'm asking for, is a sponsorship of the event, yes.
That's right. That's exactly what I was thinking. So that paperwork, thank you, but we don't need it.
Okay. Well, yeah, that would be lovely, sponsored by the city of Spring Hill.
Well, and that gives us, so now, yeah, that works. So I'm going to ask April if you'll work with me on that resolution, but to do it as a co-sponsorship, to do it out of tourism funds, and then Parks and Rec does not have to meet between now and the next meeting and make that work. So, yeah, all right. Is everybody okay with that approach? Yes. When is the whole hog festival?
It's Saturday, October 5th.
Oh.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Okay. Do we want to do it there, or do we just want to do it in budget amendment? Or do we want to just do it in the budget? Because if we do it in budget amendment 3, then we're going to have to do another amendment to roll it over. Because unless we pay it out.
Yep.
Just pay it?
Really?
Okay,
Pay it.
we'll put it in 3, and we'll pay it before the end of the fiscal year.
That would be very helpful. Thank you. That would be great,
Deb,
too.
did you get that? Well, and pay it before the end of the fiscal year. We'll need an invoice from you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
Very
you.
good.
Anything else?
Thank you, Ms. Sasson.
Okay, thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, that brings us to acknowledgements. Are there any acknowledgements tonight? Mr. Carter.
Yes, Planning Department. I think Dwayne has really done a fantastic job in a very difficult situation, where we had someone leave and left our planning department even shorter than it was. And he stabilized the ship, and it's very much appreciated from my perspective. And then having Ms. Sanders back, I think you can all tell the difference that it makes to have someone that's experienced and mature, and a mature leader in the work that's being done. It makes all the difference in the world, and I hope that you all see that, because it's a big difference from my seat.
Alderman Linville.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to give a shout out to Bell Construction, Southeast Venture, TDOT, everyone that's involved with the opening of the June Lake interchange. Took most of the day on May 31st. We got it open before it turned over to June. But you can already see the impact that it's going to make in Spring Hill. So it's an exciting moment for Spring Hill, and just want to thank everyone involved for that.
Nice. Vice Mayor Palmer.
I was like, I hope it's before midnight, before the opens. It did. Okay, it's been said, but I'll say it again. Casey Williams and the entire Parks Department, great job putting on the Hill Fest on Saturday. I was there, and it was looking dicey, but the rain held off just enough for us to get the event on. So great job, and all the volunteers, too. Thanks.
Alderman Fitterer.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we all know 2 weeks ago the Murray County Commission approved the TIF for Suitcase. So we'll thank the Murray County Commission, but also thank Alderman Linville and Alderman Fuquay for leaving our meeting and going and making public comment as the two alder persons from Murray County. And that's not the only thing we have Murray County Commission to thank for. Earlier this evening, Murray County Regional Hospital requested the Health Committee to pass a resolution opposing the Spring Hill Hospital, and they had to withdraw that resolution for a lack of support from the Murray County Commissioners. So that is two very well-placed decisions by the Murray County Commission recently.
Alderman Cox.
Thanks, Mayor. This is a shout out for Officer Rosa. We all received an email from one of our citizens that a large pile of trash had been dumped at the end of Lovell Lane. Officer Rosa was able to obtain an address label off of that and track down the homeowner who had had some electrical work done and hired a junk hauler to remove it. That junk hauler realized it was Monday and it was Memorial Day and really didn't know what he wanted to do with it. So he drove to Spring Hill. This was from Franklin. He drove to Spring Hill and dumped it at the end of Lovell Lane. They were able to track down who that was, and the company and I believe the driver will be charged with aggravated littering, which is a state fine. So I just want to shout out Officer Rosa.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned.
As we call it now. Sewers are backing up on Tipton Pass. Second time. I just think you need to know that because we're in for another battle probably. I want to ask on behalf of all of the people that I know, please, I know I agree with what you said, Mr. Mayor. Please don't build any more housing, and please don't add any more businesses until we have the infrastructure to support it. Also, the battlefield, I don't know that much about it, but apparently it's under discussion for possibly being converted to whatever, commercial, I don't know. Please don't do anything with that battlefield. Please, we need more open land. I've seen people, a lot of people walk on that, and a lot of families walk on that, and I'm advocating to please keep it. The water plant 3 years ago, I came here and I talked about the wastewater treatment plant, that I was concerned that it wasn't adequate. Then I read about the $1 million+ spent to clean it up. And I recommended that the city put things in with the bill, asking people not to put diapers and tampons and plastic and all of that kind of stuff in there so we wouldn't have to fix the treatment plant again. I haven't seen anything happen that would tell residents not to do that, and I'm asking you again. I'm very concerned about the electric grid. It's going to be a hell of a hot summer again this year. I sure hope the electric grid is being looked at if it's going to be competent enough to serve all of the needs for air conditioning that are going to occur this year. I have a comment to make on the consultant issue.
Like Ms. Caskey, I was a consultant for many years to Fortune 500 companies and more. And what I can tell you is you may not need a consultant for economic development. I agree with what she said. I would advocate for hiring a retired, seasoned economic development person as a full-time temporary person. And you can bypass all of the issues around potentially hiring a consultant, because let's face it, they're all very expensive. 25 years ago, I charged $2,400 a day. 25 years ago. I can only imagine what people charge now. And the real issue is if you get the plan, are you going to implement it? If you don't implement it, then all the money you spend on consultants is wasted. So you really need a leader. Ms. Caskey may be that leader, although I'm assuming she can't do both jobs. I think that's all I have to say. And please, no more banks. We don't need a bank in every garage. Thank you.
Thank you very much.